Hello everyone, this is Fans Politics Asia, and this is the Frontline Changes report. In the first part, and in the second part, we are going to conclusions. It's basically more like me sharing, some thoughts about 1,000 day of Ukraine war. So, first thing first, let's start with the Frontline Changes report. There's only very few frontline changes. Looks like the everything is pretty stalemate-ish at this moment, or there is actually no information of changes. So we have frontline changes over at Sonsivka. I did mention this in the situation report, where the geolocation of Russian forces confirmed Russians have advanced within Sonsivka. This is not a full capture yet, but this caused major problems because this actually go in line with what I've warned that the Russians may go for Staritani, which is just merely around 2.5 kilometers away, and they are just above 3 kilometers to the reservoir, and so this is going to cut off the entire Ukrainian forces that is defending in the northern half of the Kurakovy sector, which is this entire area here. All the Ukrainian forces here is now in danger of getting stranded if the Russian forces successfully go for Staritani. The next frontline change is over in Kurakovy, and the geolocation of Russian forces raising the flag on this eastern part of Kurakovy. Just be reminded that there is actually a water or river or water body around here. So it's not obvious, it's maybe just swampy land or something like this. So, but the Russian forces raised the flag around here. So this actually confirms the Russians have actually advanced at least in the northern half of the western part of Kurakovy. And of course, these are all water, no one is here. So but just for mapping purposes, the Russian forces advance all along the water, leaving this causeway that might still under Ukrainian control. So, but this is going to change pretty quickly if the Russians continue to move on. The next frontline change after Kurakovy is at Sukiya. So this is actually in the Pokrov sector. I actually arranged the arrangement wrongly, so I missed this. So at the Pokrov sector, Russian forces geolocated to have entered into the trenches in along this tree line. Then they gotten hit by FPV drones from the Ukrainian side, but this confirms that the Russian mapping is actually accurate, that the Russian forces have taken the entire tree line, and the Ukrainian forces are still holding the line over at Sukiya. So that's the frontline change, a very small one, tiny one over the Pokrov sector. And one last frontline change is over at Zeleny High. This is a very tiny one, which the Russian forces basically was geolocated to be on the offensive along this forest. A very tiny frontline change moving towards Zeleny High around here. So that's all for the frontline changes report. And so that's the end of the first half. I'm not going to go through the area captured is very too tiny, not really meaningful. So let's go into the opinions, to the conclusions. So let's talk a bit more about the 1,000 day. I think in the situation report, I did cover a lot on the the immediate strategic implications of the different front lines already. If you have not watched it, do check out the situation report. It's now back on the DPA War channel. So in case those that do not know, there is actually another a DPA channel called the DPA War. Do check it out. The situation report is now being published over there again because of the experimentation of the content strategy didn't work out in the way I wanted. So it didn't work out. So I just going to return it back to that arrangement where the sit rep is on the DPA War channel, frontline changes and conclusions will be on the main channel. I think that works better. So that's what it is. So the 1,000 days, I think is if you have told me that in the beginning of the war, when I started to do these mappings on day one of the war, and that I'm going to be doing this for 1,000 days every day, I will be shocked. I will be like, no. And then do it over more than 1,000 videos. No, I probably did at least 2,000 videos by now. I can't even know. I lost count. So it's pretty shocking. And what's more shocking is that it's not just 1,000 days of video making and reporting or journalism on this war, but it's also 1,000 days of people dying. I think that is the core thing. And this war is really a very unnecessary war. Because the excuse, the main trigger and excuse is the increasing militarization and the Western infiltration into Ukraine's foreign policy, and that urging and unwilling to discard the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO was the casus belli. Of course, the Russians later has made a lot of excuses, into why they should annex certain part of Ukraine because of ancestral land. Certain areas are used to be Russian territory. Catherine the Great made Odessa or whatnot. All these things. These are just justifications, but the trigger is not this. I saw some of the pro-Ukrainian or anti-Russian people say that Putin admitted that he used the excuse of it's Russian land for invasion, but it's actually not that. That is just the justification for the annexation, but it's not the invasion. The invasion is 100% because of the NATO expansion, and of course because of the civil war in Ukraine between the Donbass and the Ukrainian state. And that is something that Russia cannot really sum up. You have to understand from the Russian perspective that it is really not it's really not a good thing for the Russians to actually go to war in Ukraine. Like not just like having people dying, but it disrupts the entire geopolitical and diplomatic front of the Russians. They have been investing for years to have a closer connection with Europe. That's why there's so many gas pipelines leading into Europe. And if you look at the pipelines, pre-war towards China, that's not much. I think there's only one, at most two. The trade also is not that much. They trade with China, but it's not the primary trading partner. Russia have continuously trying to integrate with Europe as much as possible, but Russia is a huge country. It's a very powerful country. Despite that GDP wise it looks really poor or really backwards, the country's leaders know what is the truth. The truth is that Russia is actually a very powerful country and a potential superpower. And they are nuclear armed. So they are nuclear armed major power, but they're not a superpower, not like United States. So, but it is scary. No, they have unlimited land, unlimited natural resources. Europe can only envy. And that is a scary part, because if you let Russia get deep into the politics and geopolitics within Europe, everyone is going to lose control. Just like how Germany managed to dominate EU for during Merkel's time. The powerful states will have a lot of say and control over the rest in the union or in the alliance or in whatever. Russia is extremely powerful, so that is why the fear. They will not let Russia to get in, and they also don't want to get too close to Russia. So that's the main problem. This fear of the big power. Despite it doesn't matter what Putin did. Putin really did a lot to try to get close and try to build this relationship to prevent war and to bind together as one. All didn't work because the fear just outweighs everything. The same fear lies with all the neighboring countries in America. America as in the continent, North and South America, Central America, they are all afraid of the United States. Similarly in Asia, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia are all afraid of China. Same situation. And the countries around India is, apprehensive about India. So this is, and of course Iran, Iran with the Middle East, everybody is a bit like not too sure about Iran. So that's just how geopolitics is, and however, That's why you need buffer states. But the NATO expansion into Baltics and into Ukraine is just destabilizing this balance. So, and that is the trigger for war. And this thing could have avoided. This entire war would have avoided. For those that do not remember or wasn't following the war, Putin sent an ultimatum to the White House. It's not to Ukraine, to the White House, and demanded that Biden to categorically announce that they will never accept Ukraine into NATO. And if Biden say that just by some words, Russia will stand down. They answered, but no, Biden and his administration answered that no, it's Ukraine's no own foreign policy division, and so Russia invaded. But the while it's not that wrong that Ukraine is an independent country, they can have their own decision making whether they should join what kind of alliance. NATO is controlled largely by the United States. They have the say. They could have prevented a war. They decided not to. So that is the key thing. And you cannot say that our doors are open. They are free to join. But Ukraine is the same. They insist on trying to join NATO at the expense of a possible war with Russia. No one believed that Russia would do it because Putin has been warning against. They have been warning against NATO expansion towards Russia for years, perhaps even decades. 10, 20 years at least. And no one believed him because he has been warning for so long, but Russia did nothing, right? So, and Russia continues to build pipelines to Germany and continue to sell gas. They are making money, so why risk it all? And that is the thing that is a miscalculation. People mistook patience as weakness, and now today we are seeing the same shit happen all over again. Now they are giving on day 999, 998, something like this, near to 1,000 days, they decided to give Ukraine the permission to use Western cruise missiles to hit targets in Russia. And this is a big problem because the Ukrainians have no means of target acquisition because they do not own any satellites. So they don't have the capacity to actually pick up targets deep inside Russia, and they do not have the manpower, the technical capabilities, the expertise, the training to actually program and decide and launch all these missile strikes at this or those targets within Russia. The only thing they do is just fly the plane. So that's the problem. The target acquisition to programming of the target, to the technology, the missile production, all of it except for the launching of the missile is all Western, and that is the big problem. There is a direct involvement into the war, and of course, Ukraine really wants the West to join the war, and they do not even resist, and double think carefully, and they launched a ATACMS strike, HIMARS long range missile strike into Russia, and to test Russian response. Again, this is similar to the situation over in before the war started, where they don't believe that Russia would ever dare to invade Ukraine. Same situation, just because for years Russia have always won but did nothing. So now the Ukrainians have been striking targets in Russia for 2 years now, and many of them very long range with drones, and now they're using missiles. And Russia just keep warning and warning and warning. The red lines come and go, come and go, come and go, and there's nothing much in terms of the Russian response, except that the Russians do launch some massive missile strikes in retaliation, but it's pretty much a slap on the wrist. So, and That is the danger that we live in now. Russia have responded, saying that they will do a appropriate response, because they already now see it as a direct involvement of the West because of the latest attack, and that's one day 1,000, and this which means that after 1,000 days, we're not even close to the end of the war. If Trump, when he becomes president, is unable to pull off any kind of deals to that can appease Putin and perhaps even get Zelensky to agree, then with this war will likely to continue for another year, at least another year. The in strategically as well, Zelensky has also made it clear that regardless, United States is going to support Ukraine. They will continue the war. And if United States do not provide the weaponry and the ammunition, then they will produce their own. Although he admitted that their production capability is much smaller. Europe will 100% continue to support Ukraine unless something happens within their internal politics, because they have all overextended themselves. Politically, they have expended all their political credits into the Ukrainian war, which means that they can't step back, because they have already used all their political capital into saying that Russia is the great evil and supporting Ukraine is the right thing to do at the expense of their own people's well-being, including energy prices, inflation, economics. And we are already seeing the impact very heavily over for Germany, where industry is shrinking, and they are already considered in recession, and this applies to quite a number of countries in Europe as well. A lot of political upheaval. United Kingdom loss is incumbent. Then France loss is like mass majority, I think. So same thing, Germany also have the same thing happening. So a lot of things is going on, and Poland is losing its faith in continued support for Ukraine. Moldova, is not here, not there. Yeah, a lot of things happening. The Baltic states are still barking. The Chihuahua states are still behaving like Chihuahua, and that's dangerous. World War III is not that close. It is likely. I mean, as in, it is a possibility, but I don't think it's likely just yet. Thankfully, because on the Russian side, we have Putin as the leader. I think if there is a totally different leader in charge, which is not Putin, then I think things is a bit hard to say. So I think this is the major thing. So day 1,000, Russia's military success, development of the war, pretty much have wiped out most of the combat capability of the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians can't really do much offensive. They did try in the Kursk offensive and some limited offensive here and there, just to show that they can still do it. But it's just to show. It's not real. It's not like they can achieve much. The offensive in the Kursk region is that one last attempt to do something. Another target was the nuclear power plant, to use it for ransom. But they did not work. They did not even get 1/3 of the distance to the nuclear power plant. And I think as such is a big failure. But the problem is, again, they have invested in this. They can't pull back. The same thing happened in the 2023 counteroffensive. They invested in it. Clearly, the offensive has failed, but they refuse to step back. They refuse to, regroup, give up certain territory that they have so-called liberated, because that is the death trap. They refuse to do it. A lot of soldiers died. A lot of equipment was lost because of this, strategic consideration that, they cannot be seen to have failed. But failure is a failure. They can't run away, and that's exactly what happened. Then now the Russian forces are rolling back the Ukrainian success, and we are seeing that in the Orikhiv sector, Ukrainian forces previously reached this line. This was the line that they reached, and the Russians have already pushed back a little bit. And in fact, it feels very, very likely that the Russians deliberately hold the line at this position because they know that the Ukrainians will just keep coming. They'll just keep coming back to hold the line, keep sending replacement for the soldiers that was killed, and they just attrition the Ukrainians away, just like this. And which is kind of silly. This is not modern warfare. This is not the way how wars are supposed to be operated. This is supposed to trade, lure the enemies into death traps, not walking into the death trap constantly, and that's just what it is. That's what the Ukrainians have done. Similarly, in the Velika Novosilka sector, the Ukrainians went as far as Uruzhaine and Staromayoske, and now they got pushed back as well. So the lines, it doesn't look like a lot. I mean, we're talking about 3-4 kilometers. It doesn't look like a lot, but this was never an important front line for the Russians. And if you look at just at the beginning of the year, we are still talking about Avdiivka. We're talking about Voleda. The front line was actually here. This was where the front line was. The Russians have really expanded way further, and to the point where the talk about Avdiivka or Voleda, the fortress cities, was like a distant memory. It's quite scary to think of that, and it's just like once upon a time we talk about Popasna, we talk about Severodonetsk, Rubizny, where the Russians got stuck for a long time. The Zolote, the 5 different Zolotes in this region that was so complicated to cover, where the Russians then push up towards Khersk. And all this is distance memory so long ago. So it's just scary to think of that. And then the war have really changed. The entire way of war fighting have changed as well. So a lot of things to really think about for 1,000 days of war. So anyway, and strategically, I think the main strategic situation. So now that was all my no more emo thinking or thoughts about the 1,000 day of war. Let's talk about the current strategic big arrow grand strategy situation. Apparently, the Russians are in no rush of capturing Pokrov. This is Pokrov. The Russians are not in a rush to capture that. The Russians are holding the line. And what's the current situation now is that the Russians are trying to flank Pokrov in a big flanking movement to then create the conditions to attack Pokrov from multiple directions. So tentatively, we are not going to see a direct attack into Pokrov or Minokhrad, which is actually the twin city over here. So this Minokhrad, this is Pokrov. The Russians are not going to go directly. They're going to hold the line. It looks like they're going to go for a flanking movement, maybe cut off the road and force the Ukrainians upwards towards Rodinsk. So I think this is the current trajectory that the Russians is going to go towards. So which is also why we are seeing that the Russians are now moving along the railway line towards Shevchenko. And this comes at the same time where the Russians are pushing at Lysivka. So this similarly going to head towards the same situation. Then they're going to hold the line here and then continue to move on to the highway. So I believe this is what we're going to see over at this Pokrov front. So it's not what we thought, because previously I did mention that it was surprise. It's quite surprising that the Russians keep going for full frontal assaults. But it looks like the Ukrainians are building good defenses around here that the Russians are not going to try. So in this area here, this is where I already mentioned, The other big problem for the Ukrainians is actually this, this very ugly shape stuff. Yeah. So the Russians are now squeezing the Ukrainians between Dalny and the Uspenivka front region is around 7 kilometers. This 7 kilometers is the lifeline for all these Ukrainian troops, and I don't think it can be held. The Russian forces have already captured a huge chunk and then another chunk here. Effectively, this is gone. So this area here is definitely already Russian, and the Russians are continuing to push from Antonivka and Katerinivka. Fighting is already mentioned at Hanivka, and Yelizavetivka is getting hit. There is fighting reported Trudove, Konstantinopolske. So this is all getting really bad for the Ukrainians trying to hold Uspenivka. And on top of this, we have the Russians already pushing south from Sonsivka, as mentioned just now, and this will cut off the Ukrainian forces in the north of Kurakove. And from this area here, the Russian forces could attack Dashny and cut off the road for Kurakove, and that will collapse this entire sector. The Russians are also now pushing towards Rozliv, and from Rozliv they can attack Constantinople, and from this area this will actually collapse this entire front. This entire area will collapse just from Constantinople. So there is a lot of massive strategic changes, strategic ideas that the Russians are now can attempt, and they likely is attempting. So do you have one push here, another pincer over this area here? There's a attack at Sukiyali, and then the push from Kurakove, and then the push through the Konstantinivka down the river. A lot of hooks and uppercuts all over the place. So this what we'll be watching out for the next 1 month or 2 months. And at Velika Novosilka, this is also pretty problematic for the Ukrainians. The Russian forces are going for Rozdone, and in this attack they will be able to go to the Mokriali River, cut off everything north, and everything east on this eastern part of the Velika Novosilka sector, which will force the Ukrainians into a withdrawal, and that would just quickly consolidate Russian control over more of Donetsk Republic. The Russians are also pushing from Novodarivka, Rivnopil, Makarivka. So this is just a full frontal attack across the entire front to put pressure to force Ukrainians into paying attention to these fronts. However, the main attack is this. This is the main attack. This is the big one. So there's something to watch over here. Nothing really significant over in the Orikhiv sector. The Russians are just constantly pushing Orikhiv from 2 different directions, but these are just attrition war. This is not something to care about. And New York front, this is also a very attrition-ish place, but I would believe that the Russians would want a full control of Torex and Skibinivka, perhaps Novopaske, which is Petrivka. So probably the Russians will want this. And this is a bit hard battle because the Ukrainians are really putting whatever they can to hold the lines around this sector. And which is an interesting division. I mean, they have to defend or they attack or they just die. So, I mean, this isn't really a lot they can choose. But strategically speaking, this is not very important per se. Capturing of all these areas doesn't change the fact that Konstantinivka is still here. This is the major city that is defending this entire area here. So, and you already have Bakhmut, and you already have close to Chasivia. You could have attacked directly into Konstantinivka. So it's actually not necessary for a New York attack, and generally this entire area can be bypassed. You just not necessarily to go for Konstantinivka. It's just not necessary. The Russians could just go for the soft spot, just go up in this area here. They could potentially just force the Ukrainians into a withdrawal by a massive encirclement. So, but that is maybe next year problem. next year problem. It could be like a 12 months from now thing. So tentatively, I still feel like the Ukrainians could continue to defend So I don't think we're going to see such a huge collapse so quickly unless something broke. Something very big broke within the Ukrainian army, that they lost the capability to reinforce. They have no more equipments, no more ammunition. Then yes, we will start to see a hyper speed up of the Russian captures. Tentatively, what we see is already really fast. Over the past half a year, the Russians are making super fast progress in a very contested war. So that's what it is. So I don't believe anything will happen at Chasivya much. Sever's front is a lot of smoke and shadows. So I don't think we should care too much about this place. This is another place that is just meant to distract the Ukrainians. So the Russian commanders around here, pushing their troops, sending them to die, kind of stupid. Nothing much I expect over at the Liman front or the Crimea front. Over at this region, at the Sviatov region, the Borova is a long-term target. I think the Russians are slowly making some pushes around here, but this is not a priority. I think what they want is the push from the Pichane front down to Borova. I think this is the faster route rather than going through the heavy defenses that the Ukrainians have put up over on these eastern-facing front lines. And Senkove crossing is gone. This is already gone. So this already disrupted Ukrainian logistics. So let's see whether this will appear on the front line, the effect. But tentatively, not yet. This needle into Kupiansk, probably nothing for now. Doesn't look like much at this moment because there's no more footages and updates about increasing captures and whatnot. So I look like those soldiers have died for nothing for Russian PR. Kharkiv region, the Russian forces are just stretching the Ukrainian forces. This is another place where the Ukrainians are just getting attrition away rather than doing something meaningful. So this is just the objective for the Russians around here. And the Kursk front. Coming back to the Kursk front, there is this theory that always been going around that the Russians deliberately do not want to retake the Kursk region. And I think there is a very high possibility that the Russians are deliberately taking their own sweet time. Because this is a salient, this is a front line where the Ukrainians are over-invested. And it doesn't matter how much the Russians kill, the Ukrainians just keep coming back. And this is perfect for attrition war. Since they are always going to come back, why go? Why move forward? Just let them come and kill them, and then the next group of newbies and green soldiers that don't even know better will go back and die at the exact same place. And this could be actually what the Kursk front has become. Because, the Ukrainians are definitely constantly investing more and more into the Kursk front. The front lines have not really changed much. Heavy fighting continued on the western flank, and yet nothing much is changing. And so let's continue to watch. And of course, I just want to highlight there's no North Korean operating in the Kursk region or in the rest of Ukraine. No North Korean soldiers. This is just fake news from the pro-Ukrainian propaganda. I'm not sure how many times I need to say it. There is no reason for the North Koreans to be deployed. That's all. So thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe. Hope you like it. This is a 1000 day special, and I'll see you guys in the next update.